Breaking news: Qatar accuses Israel of crossing red lines over forced Palestinian displacement. A powerful new statement from Qatar has sent shockwaves across the Middle East and beyond. The Qatari government declared today that Israel has crossed its limits in its actions against Palestinians, particularly in the forced displacement of families from their homes. Doha has vowed to intensify its focus on pursuing effective measures against Israel, signaling a possible shift toward stronger diplomatic and potentially economic action. The statement came during an emergency press briefing in Doha, where officials from the Qatari Ministry of Foreign Affairs accused Israel of violating international law, humanitarian principles, and the most basic rights of the Palestinian people. The forced displacement of Palestinians is an affront not only to their dignity but to the conscience of the entire world, one official said. Qatar will not remain silent as these actions continue unchecked. The remarks follow weeks of escalating tension in the occupied Palestinian territories, where reports suggest that hundreds of families have been forced from their homes in Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza border areas. Videos and eyewitness accounts circulating on social media have shown clashes between Israeli forces and Palestinian civilians, sparking outrage across the Arab world. Qatar, long seen as a strong supporter of the Palestinian cause, has now taken its criticism to a new level by framing Israel's actions as red lines. Analysts say this is a clear warning that Doha is preparing to mobilize diplomatic channels, rally international partners, and potentially increase pressure on Israel through multilateral forums such as the United Nations, the Arab League, and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. A call for accountability. Qatar's statement emphasized the urgent need for accountability. Officials stressed that the displacement of Palestinians amounts to a violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which prohibits the forced transfer of populations under occupation. They argued that silence from the international community only emboldens Israel to continue its actions. Words of concern are no longer enough, the Qatari statement read. What is required now is meaningful action, legal, diplomatic, and economic, to ensure that Israel's violations face real consequences. Observers note that this is among the strongest public condemnations from Qatar in recent months, reflecting growing frustration not only in Doha but across much of the Arab and Muslim world. Regional and global reaction. The Qatari position has quickly drawn attention from other regional players. Turkey, a frequent critic of Israeli policies, expressed solidarity with Qatar's stance and echoed calls for stronger international action. Iran, too, praised Qatar for speaking the truth boldly and urged other states to follow suit. Meanwhile, Egypt and Jordan, two countries that have peace treaties with Israel, have issued carefully worded statements expressing concern about forced displacement but stopping short of endorsing Qatar's stronger language. Analysts suggest these governments are wary of jeopardizing their fragile relations with Israel but cannot ignore mounting domestic anger over the situation. In Europe, reaction has been mixed. Several European Union officials have reiterated calls for de-escalation and respect for international law, but have not indicated a willingness to impose punitive measures. In Washington, the U.S. State Department said it was closely monitoring the situation, while reaffirming America's ironclad support for Israel's security. However, growing criticism from progressive lawmakers in the U.S. Congress could complicate Washington's position moving forward. The Palestinian response. For Palestinians, Qatar's strong words have provided a much-needed sense of solidarity. Leaders from both the Palestinian Authority and Hamas praised Doha's statement, calling it a step in the right direction. Hamas officials urged Qatar and other Arab states to go beyond words and take concrete measures such as cutting ties with Israel, expelling ambassadors, or leveraging energy and trade to exert pressure. On the ground, Palestinians displaced from their homes continue to face dire circumstances. Human rights groups have documented cases of families living in temporary shelters, lacking access to basic necessities such as clean water and medical care. Activists argue that unless stronger measures are taken, the cycle of displacement and dispossession will only intensify. Potential measures under discussion. Diplomatic sources in Doha indicate that Qatar is currently reviewing several possible avenues of action. These include 1. Calling for an emergency UN Security Council session to address forced displacement and press for resolutions condemning Israel. 2. Coordinating with Arab and Muslim allies to draft a united front through the Arab League and OIC. 3. Exploring international legal options, including referring cases of forced displacement to the International Criminal Court, ICC. 4. Economic pressure, potentially leveraging Qatar's influence in global energy markets or reviewing trade agreements involving Israel. 5. Humanitarian initiatives, expanding financial and logistical support for displaced Palestinian families, particularly in Gaza. While it remains unclear which measures Qatar will ultimately pursue, analysts agree that its strong language represents a turning point in how the Gulf state intends to engage with the crisis. Implications for regional stability. The escalation in rhetoric raises questions about the future of regional diplomacy. Qatar has historically positioned itself as both a critic of Israel and, at times, a mediator in Palestinian-Israeli disputes. However, this new stance suggests Doha is less willing to play the role of neutral facilitator and more inclined to adopt a confrontational approach. Experts warn that this could complicate efforts at de-escalation, especially if Qatar's calls for action embolden other states to adopt similar hardline positions. On the other hand, advocates of a stronger approach argue that without meaningful pressure, Israel has little incentive to alter its policies toward Palestinians. The road ahead. As the situation develops, all eyes are now on how the international community will respond to Qatar's call for action. Will the Arab League take a united stance? Will Western governments, long accused of double standards, be willing to support accountability measures? Or will the issue once again fade into the cycle of statements without consequences? For Palestinians, the stakes could not be higher. The forced displacement crisis touches on the core of their struggle, the right to remain on their land, preserve their homes, and live with dignity. Qatar's forceful statement may not change realities on the ground overnight, but it has injected fresh urgency into the global conversation about justice, accountability, and the future of the Palestinian people. In the coming days, diplomatic efforts are expected to intensify. Qatar is likely to hold consultations with Turkey, Iran, and other allies, while also pressing for greater international visibility on the displacement issue. Whether these efforts will translate into concrete measures remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: Doha has drawn a line, and the world is being asked to respond. Conclusion. Qatar's declaration that Israel has crossed its limits by forcibly displacing Palestinians is more than just rhetoric. It represents a challenge to the international community to move beyond words and take real action. The next steps taken, or not taken, could shape not only the trajectory of the Palestinian struggle but also the broader dynamics of peace, conflict, and diplomacy in the Middle East. As tensions rise and regional dynamics shift, the world waits to see if this moment will mark the beginning of meaningful accountability, or just another chapter in a long history of unfulfilled promises.